Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Midwest Mythos. And man, do we got a good one for you today. Bringing back an old friend that's been on the show before, but before we get into that, and I'll let you know who it is, as long as you didn't, catch a sneak peek in the description or anything like that. You'll find out here in just a second. So before we get into it, sorry about not having an episode last week. I thought I lost my job, so I figured probably in order to keep my family afloat and a roof over my head and money to keep this show going, I should spend my time looking for a job. Thankfully, I got a call. I still have my job, so I ain't got to worry about that, and I'm ready to get back at it. Thank you guys for everybody that's been following, liking, sharing, commenting on the show. This past 2 weeks has been insane. 50 new followers on Instagram, at 150 followers. Y'all just been loving the YouTube channel. Um, yeah, you guys are awesome. Keep on doing what you're doing. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. And if any of you guys would like to be on the show to join the Hall of Fame of all the wonderful guests I've had on this show already and go down in a piece of Midwest Mythos history, reach out to me at Midwest Mythos Podcast at Outlook.com. You go to Linktree, fill out that little form, or, message me on Instagram like a lot of people that have been on the show did. And with that being said, Chris, how's it going? Welcome back.
Hey man, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Oh, thanks for reaching out, interacting with that post, wanting to come back on. I've been wanting to we talked a little bit beforehand, been wanting to have you back on anyway, so perfect timing.
Yeah, I always have a good time on your show. It's always a good time when we talk. We got like a lot of interesting stuff to get into, and I know that you got stuff going on, like with the job and all that stuff. It's just the general pace of life that we go through. Recently, I've had some illness in my family, and seeing as how like 10 years ago almost I lost my mother to cancer, and then this we were having a similar scare and issue with my father now, and it's just when you go from one season into the other, these things we see them coming and happening, and it's now that we know more, we have more of a plan on what to do and how to handle it, but it's that uncertainty that you face up, and if there are any people out there in their audience that are praying would like to keep my family in your prayers, I would welcome that, and thank you in advance for that.
I'll be praying for you, and I know there's a lot of great listeners out there that will be as well.
Yeah,
If,
certainly, and I appreciate that. And the thing is, it's not sort of like a thing that you can't stop the flow of time.
mm-hmm.
Whenever I see you, and I remember last time we were speaking, your child was asking for a little bit of attention during the broadcast, and it was very adorable. And it's just the process of life. Eventually, these things happen. You know, eventually my parents are gonna, pass, and then I will then take on that role of being, a primary in some way or of another, and seeing your life flourishing and growing and starting from a new beginning and fresh. It does, it fills me with hope. It tells me that, it, it keeps going. The wheel keeps turning. And, and even though I know you have to be passive on how much of your family life that you do share. But just know that those of us out there, that what we're dealing with, seeing other families grow and stuff, and stuff like that, it does do something for us, and we're happy to see it, because some of us were at the twilight of our journey, and you're flourishing and beginning, and it's good to know that there's someone on the horizon, even though we're not blood, but it's that familiarity, because we're neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and it's nice to know that that's going on. Sorry to
That
get a bit mushy at the beginning.
hey, it's all good. That's how it is, and it is important. One thing I've realized, especially since the last time we spoke on the show, is just because I've met so many people, made so many new relationships just from guests on the show or just people interacting and stuff, is there really is, especially in this community, a familial bond. Like you said, not blood, but we all are intertwined. Even if we
Mm.
don't know each other, we're all intertwined in some way, all doing the pieces of the puzzle, like I always like to talk about. And that there's also a lot of torch bearing in this community because you look at just I'm just use the Bigfoot community because that seems to be the most one of the most popular. You look at people like well Scott Carpenter, who passed away not too long ago. He passed his torches on. He got some younger people, brought them up, helped them out. So his legacy is still carrying on.
Mhm.
You got people like Ron Moorhead, or who are getting up there in age, but he's working on passing the baton on to the next people, and that's just how it needs to be in this. If we're ever going to get anywhere in these fields, and just continue to bring ideas together to solve it, we just gotta keep track of what everybody's doing and keep on passing on the torch. And
Yeah, yeah, that's it. It's just not everyone has to start from zero. It's
exactly.
we've been like the disclosure conversation has been going on for over 70 years, and even though with the current ongoing political discourse behind it, a lot of us will roll our eyes because we have this familiar been there, done that. But it's just so long as stuff is moving forward and people are interested, it's a win-win regardless of whether or not the bitter old coots are yelling at the clouds or not.
Oh yeah, it's it's fun though. I mean, and I couldn't ask for a better community to be part of. This y'all are awesome, and like we've been talking about, made some really good friends and stuff. So I know you've had a lot of things going on in your end since the last time we talked. So,
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been sort of putting my podcast on a little bit of a mini hiatus at the point. As you know, I'm working on a book and I want to sort of focus more of my energy and attention on that. And there's like a lot of other little things that require my attention. So it's not sort of like I'm just going to roll over and hibernate. It's more of I got stuff going on. I got many plates spinning. And I'll try to get an episode every now and then. I'm focusing more on my YouTube channel, doing stuff of that nature. As it's a lot. It's a lot of fun too,
mm-hmm.
being more involved on the YouTube end of things, as well as the audio podcasts for those of us who are listening, after, because there is a time and place for the audio feeds as well, because, a lot of us, we got to go to work. And a lot of us in the community, we're either whether it be long haul trucking, warehouse work, or any other blue collar, or even in the white collar zones where you're banging away at data entry or working on numbers or working on bugs. Sometimes they'll let you have a little radio play, and we're the ones that are keeping them company as they go
Uh-huh.
through that. So it's on both ends; they're both very important, very valued, and it's good to see that. I want to sort of get a bit more work on the book that I'm working on and get that sort of get a bit more down on it. I think I've gone like since I had announced it. It's been about like 6 months, and I've been made very little progress. And as much as I get disappointed and beat myself up about that, my one of my editors, she's like, "Hey, don't beat yourself up on it. It's okay." Trying to reassure me. And of course, I'm not hearing it because from my perspective, I'm like, "Oh, that's less work that you have to do if I have nothing to give you to work on. So so I kind of like get on her case about that, but it's all in good fun. But the thing is that so long as there's interest out there and we're working on stuff, there's a lot that we do. We want to contribute to the overall community, and I see it as sometimes you gotta if you have too much going on all at once, it's okay to scale back every now and then. I mean, this stuff, it's not going away. you know
Mm.
Mothman isn't gonna settle down and get married and develop a pot belly and have his little moth babies running around, and just give up. I don't see that happening.
I can't see that either. But no,
But
I get that 110%. No, I mean I guess that kind of goes with another reason why I didn't have stuff out last week too is I'm also trying to get my YouTube up and running. I don't know if you've noticed on your side of YouTube, but I've been getting a lot more interaction on YouTube than the actual audio format. I feel like people are actually starting to move towards wanting the video form of podcasts compared to the audio. Like you said, there's a time and a place, but I feel like a
Mhm.
lot people have a lot more, not necessarily time on their hands, but like a lot more jobs are making it available where you could have like a second screen going on the side
Mhm.
to where you can just watch something
well,
instead of having to just listen.
well, and let's be honest, the comment section of the YouTube stuff, it feels more real
Mm-hmm.
because whether it's Spotify or whatever we listen to our audio stuff, there's no comment section underneath those stuff. If you want to contribute and you want to, be heard and have a presence, even if it's just to say, "Hey, good show," or whatever. If you want some interaction and stuff like that, YouTube is pretty much the place to do it, so long as they have that level of interaction. Even though if we have like our social media, like Instagram and all that stuff, we have our little clips and fun stuff like this and thumbnail postings like here's the latest episode out now. But if people, like sometimes when you got that something you got to say on the tip of your tongue, you want to take care of it right then and right there. And I think that's why YouTube is probably the best place to get it, because if you do have a thought or an opinion on something that someone just said, you can take care of it right then and there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've messed with the live premieres at all for like episode drops, but I've recently started doing those. My buddy from the Ancient Enigma Files kind of got me started doing them, and I have a blast with them every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Central Time. Just the episode's already been out on the Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff for most of the day, but at nighttime, just to get to sit down, chill, have my computer open, and just people come in. We just talk as the episode's going on. So you're right with that. It's like right there you can talk with them, and well, I've had some good discussions, like stuff that I didn't even think about while talking during the recording. It's like, oh yeah, I guess I forgot to think about it this way. Yeah, it's this night. You can elaborate more on what you're talking about because sometimes, man, we're crunched for time while recording.
Yeah, I get it. And I really enjoyed your I really got to give you credit. I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt because I'm on your show and stuff like this, but I I've been closed off on so much stuff, but you've opened me to so much stuff too. Like I'll give you two examples, like Enigma files. Whenever I see Enigma files, I'd skip it because I didn't know what it was. I didn't give it, and I didn't care. And then I listened to your show with the guy, and I'm like, this is a great interview. I got to follow this person and listen to more of their shows because he would appear on a lot of our mutual friends podcasts, and I wouldn't hear the guy out. And then I listen to the show, and I'm really open to it. And it's like, yeah, this is a really good show. Sometime I'll eventually reach out to him. But I really enjoyed. That's someone that I would not have considered had you not introduced me to them. Because it was initially your interview that broke me on whether or not I should even give the others a chance. Because there is just sometimes where you get some stuff and you don't know what to make of it, and
Mhm.
all you have is that little text blurb of who the guest is, and just sometimes it's cut and paste, and you can tell.
Yeah.
But I know that if this person is taking the time to talk to you, that I'm going to get an honest assessment of them, because I like you, and so if you're likable, then if they're taking the time with you, then I'll I could at least give them a chance.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, man.
Another
Uh,
instance, of course, I probably already talked your ear off this out on social media, but I don't think I've had the chance to officially do it on the podcast. Is the anime Dan to Dan.
Oh
I was
yeah.
seriously going to skip it because the style was too a bit grungy for me,
Hmm.
and it didn't appear as polished as like some of the other stuff. It was a bit too rough. But then you had recommended it, we talked about it, and then I'm like, okay, I'll sit down, I'll watch an episode, and then I got hooked. Even on my Instagram, you can see that I did a drawing of Acrobat Silky, one of the characters up there. I did like a composite sketch of it, and it was a lot of fun for me. So I'm looking forward to it. I found several places where I can find the manga to read it.
Hmm.
I think it's
I
like one of the questions that people are asking is like, "What happened to Silky's daughter? What happened to Silky's daughter?" And the manga tells you, but I'm not going to
Mhm.
spoil it for people. But it's one of those questions like, okay, now I got to read the manga to know what happened.
Yeah, it's so. What was it that got you hooked? Was it the the aliens or was it the cryptids?
I would have to say it was the characters and the the interaction of the characters. How Ataku-kan is it Ataku-kan or Koltakon? Koltakun.
A Culticune.
Occulticun. Yeah, Occulticun. He's sort of like the super uber believer UFO nut nerd. I see myself in him. Those magazines, I had to stop and really take a look at them because I recognized them so much from stuff that I've seen from when I would do research and I would pick up articles from the 70s and he had clips and stuff from like historical stuff that I recognize right away because it's like I remember seeing this stuff in the history books and he's looking over it, and all the stuff that he talks about, all the conspiracy and UFO lore that's very familiar because that's like the core of the research in the sort of um, alien encounter realm that I'm so familiar with. It's like a deep cut of the lore that is instantaneously recognizable.
Hmm. That's that. That is very similar. Like what got me into it because I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. It was like a year ago, and I must have got done reading something, and it just came up as a suggestion. I was like, you know, I remember when the first chapter dropped a couple of years ago. I saw it, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start it, but I never did. So I just started reading it, and then next thing you know, they got the Flatwoods Monster in there, and it's not like, oh, it's the Flatwoods Monster. They go in and give a super quick like description of the origin of where it came from and why it's this, and I was like, oh, this has cryptids in it. And then a little bit later, what the Loch Ness monster
Hmm.
pops up, and I'm just like, all right, yeah, I'm hooked. It's and like you said, they do bring the actual like historical like it's an anime. You think, oh, they're gonna come up with some like fake stories and stuff. No, they're actually using like actual accounts that anybody in this field would be familiar with.
Yeah, the aliens, they're called like Serpo, they're Serpians, and of course that's in reference to Project Serpo, which was what the Encounters of the Third Kind was based off of, where there's this military exchange program of people, of switching people, letting them go to a planet, and that sort of got its lore and its long-winded story. And I found that interesting. And it was sort of like I could see the basis off of that. And there's some like other lore and that. And what I found also interesting, and this sort of like, you know, got, I guess, got sort of a bug in my side, was the local yokai lore
Mm-hmm.
with Turbo Granny and the haunted tunnel. Now, I've heard of haunted tunnels are very common in the Asian countries because they're more rail dependent than we are here on the States. With us, it's more of a novelty. We use it more for freight shipping. It's not really a transitory thing that we use as often as, say, flying and stuff like that. That's just simply, it's a matter of convenience and stuff of this. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a cultural difference that we do not embrace. Like arcades, we don't do arcades anymore. They're a novelty. Whereas in the more Asian Eastern countries and Eastern cultures, they're huge. They have 3, 4, 5-story arcades just filled to the brim with every single floor, and it's still an ongoing communal culture. Whereas with us, it's completely alien. And with that, I sort of felt this sort of, I guess, cultural familiarity, because in San Antonio we don't have a haunted tunnel, or I don't believe that we do. Instead, we have several haunted bridges. Like when one of them, of course, is with I guess would be the equivalent of a yokai would be the Donkey Lady Bridge. And there's like these several funny stories. So I started thinking, and there's this wheel turning in my head. I'll probably tell you more about this later, but I kind of want to do something along the lines of a sort of yokai S type inspired manga style comic, but sort of base it more along the lines of the Donkey Lady Bridge or the Donkey Lady character. There are several authors that I've been taking note of that I'll eventually reach out to and console to get more backstory, who have done research on the Donkey Lady, and see if I can sort of manganize and turn that into a comic book sometime in the future. After I get this project done, then I'll probably try to work on that. So it's sort of like this wheel that sort of kept turning, that was sort of inspired by that. This sort of like yokai. I still got to work on sketches. I got like a general idea of how to design the character to
Mhm.
sort of make it and sort of like, at the same time showcase like local legends and stuff. But I can work on that when I get this project done as well. And it just goes to show you how much rich history and stuff out there of what this community has to offer, as far as inspiration for to just keep us burning on so many things. Whether it be videos, or in my case comic books and stuff like this.
Mhm.
So that's sort of like a thing that I'm sort of now like heavily considering, and I just need to make notes and write scripts and stuff like this. And I'm sure if this ever gets back to Azure, she's gonna hate it. She's gonna be like, more work, because I've hired her on, Ashley Hilt, as my editor. So, she's pretty much taking on the brunt of making sure that all my T's are crossed and my I's are dotted. So I'm sure that if this gets back to her, make sure it doesn't get back to her audience. Okay? Wink. Yeah, make sure that she doesn't hear about it, because then she's going to be like, shit, am I going to have to edit that book too? But, it's like, it's just that's just the impact of manga and stuff like this. Because if you look at, what is it, Elden Ring, one of the largest video games out there, that was largely inspired by Berserk, the
Yeah.
manga Berserk. And if you've looked at that, it's crazy. It's one of those crazy animes out there. But I guess I'm sort of getting off the rails in a bit. And if you want to sort of, I guess, rein us in.
Oh, I mean, it's all good. I think it's really important to talk about stuff like this. I mean, because it's also a form of keeping all these legends and stuff alive.
Hmm.
So it's funny that you're bringing that up about the donkey woman or bridge and stuff. Because I've been tossing an idea around because I'm going to write a book at some point in my life. It's going to be a biography, but I'm not old enough to do that. I still have like we were talking about at the beginning. I'm really just starting my journey right
Oh,
now.
you
I
could get
need
the first few chapters done.
yeah, yeah. I got like I brainstorm as it goes on, as life goes on. Like, oh, I just keep tabs of this. This could make it in there and stuff like that.
I
But
understand.
one of the other things I've been thinking about is because I'm realizing how fast my daughter's growing up. She's already 6 months old, and she's about to start crawling.
Yeah, she's gonna go
And
to
I'm just like,
college next
yeah,
thing you know.
it's exactly. And she's going to learn how to read soon. And, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be a few more years. But one of the things I've been thinking, because I've been getting into a lot more of like short stories and just listening to a lot of short form content as far as like YouTube channels and like shorter, like 10, 15 minute like podcasts, like my buddy Gregory Fedora. He's got the Fedora Files.
Hmm.
Nice short little episodes that just covered the brief history of a cryptid or an event. And I was like, man, I think it'd be awesome if I wrote a series of short stories that you could read individually, but they also tie in together and they revolve around locations, different cryptids, and different legends and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So I was like, I've also been, with these couple weeks I've had off work, I've been traveling, not a lot, not far distances, but up and down Michigan and Indiana, just hiking and looking at different locations, trying to find locations for these stories to take a place. And while doing that, like I'm learning all these local legends, I'm learning all these things that I've never heard about, and I've been in this area my whole entire life.
Hmm.
So
Same.
it's like, man, we could. There's a lot I could do with this, and I'm learning so much. And it would not be possible if people just didn't make these little just different forms of media. That's one of the blessings that we have living in the time that we do compared to the 1800s and early 1900s, like all those explorers and stuff like that. They had to find the books that were scarce and stuff like that, or find these people, write letters. While we can just hop in a vehicle if it's somewhere we got to drive, or we can we got these magical computers at the tips of our fingers that we can find all this stuff on. So,
Yeah, I get it. And in a sense, it's sort of the it's like early in the early days of publishing, what got published is what sold. That's why Bigfoot dominated the market and UFOs dominated the thing, because it's like we're learning now Bigfoot's not the only thing out there.
mhm.
But for the longest time, you probably thought it was, unless you found an odd compendium that had other stuff in it, like a collection of stories. But that's just because, the publishers had like a tight rein on what got out. And now today, pretty much anyone can share their experiences, and there are more, I guess, open and experimental researchers and authors that are compiling more varied and diverse accounts of all the other stuff that goes bump in the night and that hides under our beds and stuff of this nature. Of course, the drawback is now, anybody, any idiot can walk up to a mic. Yeah, case in point, to both of us.
And I was about to say, man, look at me, man.
But the thing is that some will persevere and some won't, and that's just the luck of the draw.
Mhm.
The thing is that now that we're open to more stuff, that it is sort of refreshing to see like all this new stuff out there, because and in some cases a lot of this stuff gets piled over and forgotten. I think in San Antonio we have this local haunt called, I think it was the the children of the train tracks or something of that nature, where there's a gravity hill, and you're supposed to go to pull up to a certain part, and you park and you put powder on your bumper or whatever, and then your car eventually rolls over the hill past the train tracks, and then you'll see fingerprints in the powder. And of course, the reason that it does that is because it's a gravity hill, and you're going to roll over anywhere regardless, and you're going to see um, fingerprints on the bumpers and stuff, because we're always messing with it. Our fingers are leaving oil secretions on there that the powder's not going to adhere to. That's why that happens. And because they look small, it looks, even though it's debunked, it's still this story. And that was recently developed over. So I mean, the lore is sort of still there, but the physical place for it is gone now. And that's like a bit of our history that was sort of taken away by the growing development by the again, the turning wheels of time that you just can't stop. And that's why I think it is a bit of important to sort of get these local legends down, because there might be a chance where there will be no more Donkey Lady Bridge or Haunted Tunnel with Turbo Granny in it. No lures and stuff of this nature. So that's why I think it is sort of to put it in sort of relatable, digestible, even fun and entertaining media where you're learning about stuff and you don't even realize that you're learning all this stuff through the package of a fun and entertaining and engaging thing. And the thing is, now as independent creators, we can sort of do whatever it is that we want to. We're not bound by the rules of certain agencies, because I think it's now with the Academy Awards and stuff, they have this sort of set rule, like you have to meet this checklist in order to even be considered. Like it's like if you want, an ounce of meritocracy, you have to meet all these prerequisites that change everything and get more complicated now, and it's hard, for people to just thrive now on just creativity and craftsmanship. I
Yeah,
guess that's sort of like the plus side on now that we have accessibility to more independent creators.
I would agree. And that reminds me of something. Somebody, I forgot who it was. Somebody told me as I was getting the show started up a year ago, and almost, and we were talking, and they're like, "Dude, why even bother starting a podcast talking about the stuff?" I was like, He's like, "There's so many. There's 35 million podcasts out there. There's no point in even doing it. It's a saturated market, and you're in a very niche community too. So, but I just remember like going back to the puzzle piece. It's like, all right, cool. I don't care if well, one, I've been interested in this stuff my whole entire life. Two, it's like I'm not going out there to have a million downloads an episode. Would that be cool? Oh yeah. I mean, there ain't a single one of us that wouldn't want a million downloads an episode. But even if it's 10 people listening a week and they're learning this history to keep it moving on and persevering, it's worth it too. So I guess I'm also trying to say too, if there's anybody out there that's like hesitant to do a show or write a book or something like that, like anything that we're talking about right now, if any of you are hesitant to it because you think there's oversaturation in the field or your stuff won't get out there, do it. You never know.
Yeah. I mean, the institution of the New York Times bestseller may not exist anymore, where the only people that are going to get it are the referred and preferred people that, like, sort of like they're already poised and groomed and sort of pushed to the front line to get that already. Yeah, that's probably not obtainable to regular people.
Hmm.
But everyone has their unique story, and even if they do, people are still interested in these stories. Like I said, there's a reason why it's saturated, because people are hungry for something. And even if it is a niche thing, that just means it's just a special interest. So there's like a more of a referred and preferred, fan base. And the thing is that even if
Hmm.
we have our things where we do our shows and we may not get the best listeners. I mean, whenever I do a show, and this is just my mental approach to it, I'm sort of my own best customer. The I do the kind of show that I would love to listen to, and I talk to people that I'm really interested in talking to, and even if it's something that I may not be familiar with their work, I may have just met them. I think with J.B. Kane, I talked her ear off about Dungeons and Dragons and high fantasy and stuff like that, because that's sort of a something that a commonality that she had in her background. that we could talk on it. And I felt like we had a fantastic episode, and I really enjoyed that conversation. And I think that those people who, have that sort of interest, they really love that stuff. And there's like a lot of interesting people here who I just really enjoy engaging with and talking to. So as far as, even if I'm not like on the top tier, like I'm not going to ever win an Emmy for my podcast or whatever the hell that is. But the point is, I did a good show, and we know enough, engineering wise, to get a good enough show together so that way it's not unlistenable. That's
Hmm.
another thing. The ones that are completely unlistenable, that are total drab, they're going to fall off.
Yeah.
But those who put effort into their endeavors, there's going to be something there, even if it takes, it may not be feasible for some people to do this, and that's completely understandable. There is a sort of, there's starting to be a barrier of entry now, and maybe that's going to dissuade people who probably shouldn't be involved.
Yeah.
But those of us who do step in, we're definitely going to be on a journey, and for a lot of people it's going to be worth it. For us as the creators, it is definitely worth it, because otherwise we wouldn't be here in the first place.
Exactly. And this stuff's, I mean, I look forward to every single interview I do, just knowing that I get to hear something new, or I get to talk to somebody, like you said, that has a very common interest in what I do. So it's because, it is kind of, in the grand scheme of things, there is a lot of us, but, unless you're living somewhere in like a big city or something, even then, just finding similar people to talk face to face with in everyday life about this kind of stuff can be pretty difficult sometimes, depending on your location. So, like for me, it's like this is my little. I love putting all the time into it. It's to me, it's not like, oh man, I gotta go there. I gotta edit all the stuff. I mean, I hate doing social media, and that's probably my biggest downfall right now. I but every other aspect of it, this is my favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I need to start producing shorts and stuff of that nature. It's more of a how-to, that because I don't quite know how to do it. And and I know that some programs have like an integrated option to do it, but depending on the program, it'll like take away from resources that they allocate you, because that's pretty much how a lot of this stuff goes. It's like, even though we have our programs, they'll have their uh, paid tiers on how much they'll let you play with them.
Yeah, that's the that's the situation I'm in right now
Hmm.
with. So I just switched to well, we're on Riverside now. Last time we were on Zoom. Zoom was Zoom's awesome for just getting into it
Hmm.
because they do have free options, especially if you're doing anything less than an hour an episode. Problem with me is I like to go over an hour sometimes. Sometimes it's 2.5 hours. But Riverside so far has been awesome, and I they do have a free version, but I decided to bite the bullet, put my big boy pants on. I was like, I'm going full stead into this podcast, and what I got now, I mean, I'm paying a decent amount a month for it, but it does do a lot of things I don't know how to. So I was able to make a short one time when I had Josh Monday on the show. I was like, I got to make. There's one clip in here I have to make a short of, and it took me 3 hours to make a 30-second short. But with this, by the time we're done recording this, I'll hit a button, it'll make 30 shorts in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and it's everything that I would have done anyway.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There's a lot of getting around it. I think in the days of cassette tapes, we would learn to get around it a lot. The plugging in the RCA cables into all the different stuff, and then recording all this stuff, and so that way we could make copies of the movies that we rented for our home library. And then some would implement a sort of like a guard to protect against that. So that way, when the signal loops back into another recorder, it'll like obscure the image. So that way, you kind of like to prevent piracy and stuff of that nature. But still, there is workarounds out there, and I've been talking to a lot of people out there, and they'll often recommend like aftermarket programs and stuff of this that are pretty affordable, and some of them free. So that way, if there is something I really want to do, I can definitely do a workaround to do it. The program that I use, Zencaster, it has a sort of a tiered system for exporting videos, so that way, if I can, like, I'll export the video, and then afterwards I'll run it through another video editing program that's on my computer, that's on site, that I can then add little stuff like more procured name tags and stuff of that nature, and little things here and there. I think one time I did an interview with Michaela Ford. She's a British woman, when we were, of course, talking about Doctor Who and all this stuff, because of course, and I cracked this joke about, because she says she DJs on the side, and she's a redhead. So I'm like, oh, what's your name, DJ Ginger Lightning? So during the interview, I did like a little, I popped up a little AI image of a redhead woman in a DJ thing, and I just popped it up during the screen, during the thing after the fact. And it's fun little things, and I need to take that and then turn that into a cute little clip. But it's stuff like that, these fun one and done moments that that you need to share with people, and it sort of helps, the bite sized stuff. It helps people get an interest into like the whole thing, and the people that are really interested will come on, and it catches new people. Just like how us appearing on each other's shows, we cross our audiences and stuff of this nature, and then the bite-sized stuff, it's sort of like little tidbits, so that way people like, oh, they don't miss out.
Hmm. Oh, for sure. Oh, man, my. All right, that didn't come through. All right, I was making. Sorry, I had to see my daughter screaming. I was like, "Is it coming through, or was that just me getting a little too close to the microphone?" But
Yeah, she's got to work
we,
out those lungs.
yeah, oh yeah.
No,
Sh-
that's
if sh-
good.
but yeah, short. I've stumbled upon a lot of people I listen to based off the little shorts too. They are a good way.
Hmm.
It's it's weird. This is an ever changing game. Like it seems like every couple months, like there's a. It's the core is still the same. We're still talking on a microphone, but everything around is changing every couple months. So it's like, oh, you finally learn how to do something, and then it's like, oh, now here's this new thing you got to learn. Here's this next thing, and sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not.
Yeah, I mean, on the base, we sort of like figure this stuff out. Eventually it'll settle down, and then we'll settle on something. I think recently a lot of our neighbors were using podcasts, and then they had sort of a thing where they changed their tiers, and now everyone's ditching Podcastle and going to other stuff now, and it's like there's going to be upsets, there's going to be many disturbances in the force, but it would be nice if there was like a recording program that we could just buy, just, and then just have that and just use that, and then people could just call in and deal with that. But everybody's got to have their little bells and whistles and find out what goes best with you. But the thing is, so long as we're learning and growing, and so much of us have a base knowledge of what we want, and we know how to get it from what's available out there. Like I said, when I have to do the workaround, because I want more than what the base program can offer, so I have to use workarounds to get that stuff done. But I know well enough to get it done. And I think that's the important thing, that all of us, you got to sort of move with the times. There are people out there that they just do the radio show, and they're more legacy media types, and they really don't learn and grow. But they'll hire like producers and stuff to do all that heavy lifting for them,
Hmm.
and then that sort of everything is taken care of then through that. So it is a sort of an ever growing stuff, and some people are like stuck in their ways. But I don't know. It's the scene is constantly changing. It's like we're getting to a point now where before, even though we talk about YouTube and all that stuff, YouTube has its sort of it has its sort of it sort of limits what we can talk about most of the time.
Hmm.
So we have to learn how to talk around stuff in YouTube speak. But now that the things are changing now, it's like stuff that we could talk about. Before it was like the legacy media, um, radio and stuff like that, AM radio and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now some of the people who were kicked off of AM radio for controversial stuff that they did online, they're getting back on, and it's like people are like, well, why would you go back to radio? It's an old archaic mode. They go back on a radio, and it's one of the most listened to shows because people are definitely it's like it's what works, and that's always going to be the thing moving forward, and so many people in the interest of whatever trending thing, they're trying to force the market, but it's just the market eventually corrects itself, and it's just a that's more about another topic, but in
Yeah.
general you get the idea.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, we're talking a little bit about it beforehand. I know some people have been probably wondering where it's been this episode, and they can be patient. Y'all can be patient. This is good stuff too. But last time you were on, you shared a couple of your encounters and some that you had heard about. But when we were talking beforehand, you said there's possibly a couple more that you could talk about this time.
Yeah. Let's see. I think last time I teased everyone with a ghost cat story, and this happened to my brother. He was on his way to work. There's this common intersection, this crossroads that we have to go, to get to the office, to get to the workplace. And when we're coming and going, it's usually like 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. It's still dark out. Nothing's going on. It's bare. It's silent. You know, and he's driving up the road, and then he sees this thing come out and cross the road. And his headlights, it looks like a little cloud, like a 2D picture of a cloud or whatever. Except it's transparent, semi-transparent. It's this dark spot of nothing. It just sort of like goes like it's bouncing along like it's walking like a cat walking on feet, and its head or whatever approximately would be its head has these two eyes that are staring at him like these like as if you were to poke like if you were to poke a hole through a piece of paper, you could see through what's behind it. It was like that. He could see what was behind it through the little eyes that it had, and it was about the size of a cat. It had gone more than halfway across the road when he had pulled up on it, and then it apparently saw him, and instead of going the rest of the way of the road, it just went back the way that it had came, which I had surmised was more of an animalistic behavior. That's more like if you see like a raccoon or a cat or any other type of small, you know, vermin creature, that's just how they behave. They're not gonna keep bounding forward on on the environment that they don't know. They're gonna go back with the path that they're most familiar with, because especially if they're evading. And that's just what happened. It just, poofed off, and then he immediately texted me and told me all about it. And that was sort of like I guess like a sort of like a shadow cat type of thing. I guess it was like a somewhat like a sort of cat shape, but it was like I don't know. He just described it like it was this little absence of light that was just, but it sort of bounced when it walked. I don't know that he could see the feet or if there were any feet, but it sort of had this stride to it, like a sort of bounciness to it that you would only get with like feet. If it was either the ghost of a cat or if there's like shadow creatures that are more cat-like, I would say it was something along those lines.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. I mean, I hear stories of like cat spirits just in a lot of the stuff I listen to and stuff like that, and a lot of the time it gets associated like with either witchcraft or the if you're in the Middle East like the jinn, because a lot of people they think jinn and they're thinking genies and stuff like that. Just but they're actually, at least from what I've heard, I've never been out that way. I've never seen it one. They're described as like cat-like beings and stuff like that. So I'm not. I mean, that's an avenue for that kind of stuff, possibly. Or you would hear about the interdimensional raccoons being the Mothman. Maybe it was Mothman's little baby. Yeah, that's interesting though. I haven't heard anything exact like.
Yeah,
So it was like
people.
cloudy.
Yeah, I guess as it was like how they always describe the shadow people as darker and dark.
Uh huh.
Some of them have defined edges, like a defined silhouette,
Yeah.
and some are just sort of like a cloudy mass of like uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever it is being seen through a very heavy filter. And I think that's more of what it was, that it was sort of like it was probably heavily obscured by the light, and it was just sort of doing its thing. But
Huh.
I mean, it wasn't a shadow person. It
No.
was more like a shadow thing, like a little shadow. Again, the closest thing was a cat because its behavior was more like a feline's. In that, like any cat you run into, they'll always cross the roads, and then when they see you, they poke up instead of just finishing crossing the road. Depending on how they go back the way that they came, they just shoot right back, and that's sort of what this thing did. It was very interesting. I don't know that I've ever heard anything. I haven't seen anything. I know what road it is, and I'm going on it all the time. Just commuting to and back from work, and I've never seen it. And even then, I've never seen anything spooky around the office or
Mm-hmm.
you know I it, I mean, people tell me ghost stories and stuff. You always hear like, oh, the vaults are haunted and stuff like that. But I've never seen anything, and it's just one of those little weird one-offs that I just find so interesting.
Oh yeah. It's almost making me think, and it's just like this is just like a headcanon kind of funny thing. I'm thinking of this is I think it was Shane Jones that I was talking to about it because we were talking about his shadow people, uh, how they're like could be like an alternate dimension or just like a different plane where it's the only reason we can't see them or make them out that they're either these blurry masses or just these silhouettes is just because we cannot perceive like the light in which they come from or whatever pigments or anything that they would have. Like the light in this dimension could not uh, refract off them and stuff like that, or so we would not be able to see them. Just like because everybody, like you said, everybody says they're blacker than black, darker than dark, and you just can't see anything besides the silhouette. Maybe it is just a cat, man. One of these interdimensional shadow people's just cats to just slip through a little thing and it's just walking by. Right,
Yeah,
just right place, right time.
yeah, very well could be. I got no I got nothing that could really, I can't argue with that. It's just whatever it is what it was, and it was just doing its thing. We just happened to catch it this time.
Exactly.
And since then, I haven't caught it then, so it's probably either learned or it invokes a heavier cloak next time.
Hmm. Yeah, and stuff, man, like stories like that, them quick little ones. Those are some of my favorite because ain't nobody ever gonna argue with that. Oh, I just saw. This is what I saw. This is what it is. What it is. I'm not gonna say it's this, or that. It just happened, and if if I see it again, awesome. If not, it is what it is.
Yeah, it's just a nice little one-off of something special. Because I know with like all the Bigfoot and all the other stories, there's so much behind the story that people need to either they're looking for that just so that way they can find a means of debunking it or something of that nature,
Hmm.
and other because it's so hard to accept that that there's weird shit going on all the time. And that's just like the thing is like everybody has like a weird stuff happened story. Everybody,
Yeah.
and it just shows like well maybe whatever planet we're on is weird stuff just happens by default. Like it doesn't have to be a constant. I know like a lot of people want it to be a constant, and some people go out and they really try really really hard to sort of make that happen type of thing. But sometimes it just isn't. It sometimes the one little kitty cat just that's it. That's all there is to it.
Oh yeah. Now you did mention a light man beforehand. You, would you
Yeah,
care to?
and I guess this is like another family story. This one was passed down from my mother. And in our house, we have, of course, the L-shaped hallway where there are kids' bedrooms on one end and the parents sleep on the other end. And there's like a bathroom on the side, and you have to go through it to get to the main house, like the living room and the kitchen and the dining area and all that nature. Well, my mom was, she had gotten up, it was middle of the night. She was going to just get a drink of water, you know, just settle her nerves back to get to sleep or whatever. She had gone, she was walking down the hallway, and as she had, walked down the hallway, me and my brother, we were like, I think at the time I was 4 years old, and we were both they had put us we were small enough that we could both fit in one room, so we were in our room, and she walked past up to our room, and outside the door frame of our room was this sort of silhouette of a sort of i i, I want to say man, but the way that she had described it, she couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. It was just a shape, a humanoid like shape. And it had gone it was like you couldn't see details, you could just see the silhouette, and it went down into the sort of like past the knees, started to diffuse into transparency. And as far as the limbs, I don't know if I could say the same for the limbs. If they were at the sides of the entity, you wouldn't be able to tell. And it was made of light. Instead of darkness, it wasn't a shadow person, it was the inversion of it. And she saw it, and she freaked because of seeing something that wasn't supposed to be there. And then in the moment that she jumped, that she had the jump scare, it bleaked out of existence. So what what she her her story was that what she would tell us is that it was our guardian angel. Anything weird happened in the house, that was the culprit, the guardian angel. That's how she would try to keep us from, freaking out,
Hmm.
and stuff of that. I guess that was sort of her point of control. But the thing is that emotionally, she had said that she didn't feel any fear or antagonistic anything from it. I don't think she had stared at it long enough to invoke any kind of emotional intent from it. Because you could tell, I mean, a random person on the street, if you pass by them and they look at you and engage with you, you can get a feeling, an aura of what it is that their intention is. And if they just pass by you and there is nothing and they're not engaged with you, you don't feel any type of emotion emanating from them. And
Hmm.
I guess because this was sort of a passing motion, she didn't feel any type of anything from it. There, it was just like a man of light, just standing there. I believe he was emanating the light. In I don't know if there was like a halo shining down on him or a spotlight from somewhere on him. If it even is a him.
Hmm.
But just for the sake of story, we'll say him. As a young kid, I never remembered anything from that. I don't ever remember her being shook up about it ever as a young kid. But then when you're a little kid, your parents are like, they're nothing can break them type of thing. They're these invincible pillars of parenthood. That you don't ever see them being afraid of anything.
Yeah.
But as far as that, it's just a story that she would tell when her and all the ladies of the family would get together like a little coven, like a little, like a little coven would get
Uh-huh.
together. They would just swap ghost stories, and that was hers. And I remember one time when all the ladies had gotten together and they were swapping stories again, they started talking about witches and stuff of this nature. And then, in the lull of a conversation, there was this dead silence that just naturally came down, and it was deafening. And then, for some reason, in the pantry, all these pots and pans just fell down and crashed down for no reason, and just made this loud bashing crash and just scared everybody. And then they just stopped and just started laughing hysterically because they had this silence that had come up over nothing. And then this sudden loud was broken by the sudden intrusion, this crash that just came out of nowhere when they were, of course, naturally in the middle of, swapping spooky stories.
Hmm.
And it's just I don't know. I just find I really like this story. My personal headcanon is that when you pass, you get a life review. And during the life review, my mother had decided to, just check in on the kids when we're sleeping. And what she had walked in on was her own spirit. That she had walked in on her own ghost, because there's a lot of conjecture that what ghosts are slips in time. That what we're seeing is an after image or a before image of something out of place. And that's sort of I like to think of it like that because it's sort of it's comforting for me. It's very comforting, and I think it makes a heartwarming story. And it would just be a perfect little narrative, and
Yeah.
it would just be like a perfect little bow on this story that it means a lot. And by inferring that, I'm giving it more emotional weight and meaning to me in particular.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and argue with that because, like, even like with the lens that I look through things, like I believe that time is like only here. That afterwards, because God, for me, God operates outside of time. All that operates outside. It's not the same as here. So I'm not gonna say when it comes to stuff like that, after our life, I'm not going to say anything's impossible. You know, that's that is nice though.
Hmm.
It it almost reminded. Did you ever watch Supernatural?
I've heard of it. I've seen the anime,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of the hardcore fans hate it because the model designs aren't exactly one for one to the characters.
Hmm.
But I enjoyed it, so I have a general idea.
Well, and well, this show came out almost 20 years ago. So if it's spoiling anything for anybody, it is what it is. Get over it. It's one episode of 100 plus. So it reminded me of one of the early episodes where the brothers they go back to their childhood home because they get a call, and there's this woman. Well, there's this little girl in her closet. It lights up super big, and there's this like flaming woman demon monster thing that just keeps coming out of her closet, and it's like trying to scare the girl and the family to getting out, and it sets the house on fire and stuff like that. But then they realize that, oh, hey, no, what it was their mother's spirit was like, I think she was trapped there, and she just wanted everything to stay the same because they were like remodeling the house and stuff. But she was just this giant bright fire lady there, just scaring them. But yeah, she was just it was just the mom, and she just wanted to look after her home that she raised her boys and stuff in and stuff.
Hmm.
So that's what that reminded me of your that story that you told, way nicer, way chiller, stuff like that. But it that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I mean, I can still find my childhood home, but it's never. I've never thought to ever knock on the door and ask if anything spooky ever happened here.
Hmm.
Because I know, I mean, I can find the exact spot where the shadow, this light person showed up. I can find and stand the spot to it exactly to the T. I know exactly where it is, and I'm sort of like, I don't know. I mean, yes, I am insanely curious if other families since then, since we moved out of the home, like what are they going through? Are they happening stuff? Does a person of light show up for them? Or are they running into what would be, the after images of myself and my brother running through the house? Do they see my mom coming around the corner and scaring the shit out of them? Because that's what my mom would do to me, is whenever you turn that corner, she would jump scare me. And one time I really had to go to the bathroom, and I was undoing my belt as I had turned the corner, and she jump scared me, and I had jumped, and my pants fell down, and then she laughed about it, saying that I scared your pants off, and and it was, yeah, I wasn't as amused by it as I am now because I really had to pee at the time, so
Mm.
it wasn't funny then.
And one of those nice things that we can look back at and share a good laugh. I got a lot of those too. Oh, but um, there's more thing that we talked about beforehand that I just can't pass up on the opportunity to, because you got quite a bit of knowledge on the topic. You recently, I can't remember exactly where it was, but you went on a show or was an event and talked about Travis Walton.
Yeah, it was Luigi Greenberg's Skeptical Robot. Um, it's a YouTube show. I know Luigi Greenberg through the Dabbleverse, which is a Stuttering John fan group, or I guess anti fan group. It's pretty much just there's this radio personality called Stuttering John. He's obnoxious, and the community that trolls him and makes fun of him is sort of like getting together and doing its own thing. And that's what that is. It's adjacent to that. And some of like not every minute can be spent goofing on Stuttering John. So they have to amuse themselves somehow. So they come up with this program called Skeptical Robot, which is it takes a more hardline skeptical view of the popular topics at the time. They've done a crackdown of the Amityville horrors. They've done all these other types of issues and all these other prominent historical cases. And I've been wanting to get on the show, but a lot of the stuff that I've presented to them to look at has sort of it's either a lot of the media has sunsetted, as in one of them I wanted to talk about the Stan Romanek case, but the most prominent since the accusations that have come after him, one of the most I consider one of the best case studies of him. Uh, a documentary has it's been like I guess it's been shelved or taken off the air, unfortunately, which sort of takes a lot of what we can talk about out of circulation.
Hmm.
The the Travis Walton case was one of the most prominent cases out there, and I had a personal story where I had met Travis Walton, and the circumstances weren't the best. It was very grim. It was in Houston when there was a Paracon in Houston. A hurricane had just rattled through the Gulf days before, and the event was still going on because it was when you set these events, you just can't, it's hard. It's so many wheels are turning. You just can't stop on a dime. So the event was still going on, and I would say about maybe 30 to 60 people had shown up. It was very sparsely populated, but just the fact that it was still happening was a miracle.
Hmm.
As I was driving into town, I had to go through several neighborhoods. I could see the water line on all of the houses from the flash flooding. I could see all the destruction and all of these people, their lives were on the lawn, discarded and waterlogged and water damaged and stuff of this nature. And I'm going through all of this personal turmoil that all these people had gone through. And the hotel was filled with, it was there was a lot of people there, not really for the con, but they were there because they were refugees and stuff like this. They had nowhere else to go, and I see people walking around in pajama pants and stuff of this nature because they had nothing else. And it was so harrowing. So when I got into the actual con stuff itself, at the time I had just one episode of my podcast out. So this was probably about 7, 8 years ago. And I had met, and Travis Walton was there. He was one of the keynote speakers. It was Travis Walton, Terry Lovelace before he had hit it big. He was giving out ash cans of his book, little folder pieces of like the first 3 or 4 chapters. This was like Daryl Sims was there, and I had a friend there, a mutual friend, Greg Lawson, the paranormal detective. He was there too, and I had met him, and Travis Walton was the most personable, pleasant man I had ever encountered. He was so friendly, and I would talk to him sparingly because I didn't want to hoard this, keep them all to myself. But given the circumstances, I was pretty much one of the only people really talking to him. So I got to have Travis Walton all to myself. I got to talk to him about anything and everything. We talked about the political climate at the time. We talked about the UFO stuff. I got to see him engage with other people. And the thing is that when he would engage with other people, like you would expect, they wanted to tell him their story. And he would listen and he would give them his perspective of it, and it was just so personable. He was just so nice and kind, and I had a blast. I think they had a VIP dinner, and one of my buddies was able to get me in, and and it wasn't like exactly that hard to sneak in because there was like only a few people there anyway. So I'm sure they were glad to have one more person at the table, and I got to sit next to Travis Walton, and and several of my friends there, and it was great. It was everything you could imagine, every positive thing you could imagine. That's what it was, and we had this. It was just I had the time of my life there, and Travis Walton, he came off as such a wonderful and pleasant man. He was patient with every single person who came and talked to him. He was personable. Like I keep saying that again because that's just what it was.
Uh-huh.
He was an absolute specimen of a man. He was like a total unit. Um, he just and he what everybody got what they paid for and then some from him. And as far as the people telling their stories, they would bring up their encounters, and he would talk about with them about the familiar lore of it and all that stuff. He was pretty much telling people what they wanted to hear from him. Affirmation and encouragement, and you're not crazy and stuff like that. And it was one of the most pleasant experiences that I've had at a paranormal event, and it changed. I'm not going to say it changed my life, but it was one of the most memorable experiences that I had ever had.
It's That's awesome that you got to do that. It's unfortunate the circumstances that the convention got reduced to being pretty small,
Yeah.
but it is really nice having those small events. So I had a similar, not with Travis, but with Ron Moorhead actually, and we up in Michigan. Eric from the Uncomfortable podcast, it was his first convention he put on. It's called Bigfoot and Brews, and it was 10 minutes down the road from my house at the time. So I was just like, "Oh, Bigfoot convention, okay, let's go." It's at a brewery, so I know it ain't gonna be huge, but sitting there, just hanging out, and I'm like, man, number one, I'm like fanboying a little bit because Eric's there, and I really enjoy his show.
Yeah, his show is fantastic. I love it.
So I got to sit and hang out, talk with him. Like it wasn't even me coming up to him. He just came up to the table. He was like, "What you eating?" I said, "Brisket burger." He's like, "Had that for dinner last night. It was pretty good." I was like, "Yeah," and we were just talking because the brewery had a Dewey Lake Monster special brew for that day. And he was like, "Did you get some of that before he got out?" I was like, "Dude, at 10 o'clock in the morning this morning." So, we're just hanging out and stuff. And Ron's the main speaker of the day. They had a lot of good speakers. And I'm just sitting there and I'm listening. And I'm like, this dude's booth is right behind me. I'm just going to turn around and talk to him when he's done speaking. And because there's only like 50, 60 people there. Everybody's like, "Oh, it's Ron Moorhead," but they're just there to get their copy of Quantum Bigfoot signed and a copy of a CD of the Sierra Sounds. They don't want to sit and talk with him. And I had just really I've always heard of him for the Sierra Sounds, but like his research and stuff like that, I was just getting into. So I got to sit there. I was like, pick his brain. It was awesome. Just hang out, dude. If you ever get the chance to meet him in person, one of the most down to earth researchers out there, cool as a cucumber, and he'll talk to you about anything. It ain't even gotta be Bigfoot.
Yeah. I did see him at a couple events, and yeah, exactly. He is a very pleasurable man. I do really, from what I've seen him interact with people, and yeah, you're spot on. Definitely.
It's fun because everybody looks at these people because they're famous,
Mhm.
in a way. Uh, but the reality is that they're people too. Obviously, you're gonna have those people fanning over like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to you. And then, but if you go to them and you're just chilling and stuff like that, they're just another person.
Mhm.
You can sit and talk, and it's awesome when they do take the time and you get to pick their brain, ask them questions that you normally don't get to. So you can, if you're a skeptic on the thing, because as we were talking about beforehand, there's a lot of controversy with the Travis Walton abduction story, and we could get into that.
Yeah, yeah. I
And
when you're ready, yeah, we can definitely tackle that.
yeah, and so like I imagine like a lot of your questions are like skepticism if you had any going into it, you kind of could play the field a little bit, maybe get stuff because the reality is when we're on media and stuff like that, except for my show, I don't edit anything out, you guys, unless unless it's really bad. So y'all getting everything. But you know, it's media's highlight clips. The reality of it is you hear what whoever the producer of the content is wants you to hear. So, you kind of get there's a lot of back and forth. Is this what they actually mean and stuff? But when you get to sit down with them face to face, even more so than we are on the screen right now, you can really feel the emotion in what they're saying. So it makes it a lot easier to, if you're a skeptic, to feel the playing field.
Yeah, I totally agree. So if you got any questions regarding anything, you can go ahead and if you got any fire, otherwise I could just lay down the basics.
How about you lay down the basics? Because some people might not, be familiar with the topic, and then
Sure,
we'll just
sure.
roll the
And
dice
if
after
you
that.
have any follow-ups, don't forget them because I'll be happy to roll back to them. The general consensus of when I was on Skeptical Robot, yeah, it is a skeptical stance on it. And even though we are playing stuff up for humor and jokes, there is a sort of hardline skeptical lean on it, and I'm fine with that. I have no problem cross-examining stuff or looking at stuff from different. I came in, I was like, I understood that there was a lot of baggage with Travis Walton and his story. I totally understood that. I mean, I wasn't going to let that I had a pleasurable experience with him, say that that means that I'm not open to the idea of an argument of what his encounter was, of a skeptical view of his encounter. His What I will acknowledge though is that the Philip class issue is that, yeah, he came very hard against Travis, but then there are some issues where I do feel like ethical lines were crossed. And it's not sort of like to this is one for the believers. It's more of this is just how you should approach these subjects. Whether it doesn't matter what side that you're on. And one of them was where Philip Glass offered money to some of these guys to turn their story, and I kind of feel that's more like you're trying to bribe a response rather than get to the truth. And I don't think that was brought up during the episode, so I don't. That's like an issue that I kind of want to address. But other than that, anything else discussing the story, I think, is if it's valid, then I have no problem with it. There's conjecture that him and I believe it's Robbie, his one of his guys they had decided to hoax this encounter, and that the other men were not privy to it. The idea was that they were going to do it to get out of the contract, and at the same time they were going to, I don't know, I guess, cash in on the story altogether, because there was like a saying that they could benefit from it somehow if it was a very convincing story. I think at the time, I don't know if they had planned to, but the Inquirer had offered a substantial sum to anyone who could come up with the best UFO story. So there's financial motivation there. And then it was, I believe that it was the people state that at the location that they had worked during an off-hour set, which would have, like they had worked during unusual hours on like one of the off days where I guess they weren't supposed to work or something, or I guess it was like a set schedule and they were working outside of the schedule, which would have primed the events for what was about to happen. And then I also believe it's that a lot of people try to throw this in, that there was a fire tower in like close to the proximity of the encounter that people believe they could have put a spotlight on or something like this, and that Travis and Ron were, suspiciously absent from the other guys for like a brief moment in time before they had all decided to pilot and go home. And that leads a lot of people to believe that they could have staged it. And then I think it was that when Travis was gone for 5 days, I believe it was, is that people had stated that when they had searched for the Travis, because they had done a manhunt, a wide manhunt, his mother's attitude was very nonchalant, and that she said, "Oh, he's with the star people," and stuff. Very, very, you know, like not someone whose son had just gone missing, and as
Yeah.
the sheriff had stated, could have been murdered. I during the show I had made the statement, her behavior wasn't, what you would expect of someone whose son had just disappeared in the woods with 5 men. It's things didn't line up, and I understand that. And then looking into, as I had, because I had listened to the breakdown from last podcast on the left. They did a breakdown of it, and it was really good. It was very concise, and Travis Walton and his brother were extremely versed in UFO lore and stuff like this, and they, even to the point that they wanted to get abducted. It's like it was supposed to be something that they would not shut up about. And they even had like a pact, like if you get abducted first, here's what you do, and if I get abducted, we'll do this. Sort of like if this happens to you, first thing you got to do is call me and tell me all about it. And I think that all was playing into it, is that there's a lot of um, evidence that he very well could have uh, massaged this encounter, or even outright hoaxed it. That I completely understand that
Hmm.
argument, and I guess what was sort of, you know, and I can understand that. Well, what does that mean now? Because then one of the witnesses, I believe it was Ronnie, who he had come out, and there were several instances since then where Travis Walton had tried to, um, for money, he went on like the a show called, I believe it was called $1,000 Pyramid or something like this, or some type of show where you have to pass a what do you call it, one of those lie detector tests,
Oh, the lithographs?
yeah,
Is
the
that what that is?
lithographs, or something of that. You have to pass the test in order to get the higher tiered amounts of money, and he had put himself on there, but he didn't pass it. So and that was sort of like embarrassing. So that, but of course, historically, that sort of, it's kind of swept under the rug.
Uh-huh.
And with with that, also, I think there was also a lot of things that he very well could have been financially motivated to do stuff, and I completely understand those are valid arguments. I think there was another instance where, when Ronnie had withdrawn his, I'm no longer a witness, he had given this scathing interview with his producer where he had pretty much laid down the framework, pretty much confessed to everything. and had laid down how it was done and all this stuff because he was mad that Travis was going to produce, be on a documentary and he wasn't going to get a pay cut. So that sort of, broke, pulled out the rug from everyone. And then what he thought he could do is that the producer then put out the call, and it's like there was no deception in it, and they're like in that he wasn't, he knew he was being recorded. He knew that this was a phone call that was that was being recorded for posterity, and then the phone call was released. And I guess Ronnie, not really understanding the internet, thought that he could just, call the guy and tell him to take it down, and then that would be the end of it. But, cat's out of the bag.
Hmm.
Because I guess, he had gotten, Ronnie or whatever, had gotten a lot of pushback from the community, for doing this, because, like I had stated before, I mean, Travis is well loved. He is one of the most revered encounters and stuff like this. And I can understand like a lot of people not wanting to let go of this,
Hmm.
whether they believed him or not. And this guy had pretty much set himself up in an adversarial position to that. So he had gotten a lot of backlash, and I guess he wasn't used to that, and he thought that he could just, take it back. But that's not what happened. And the conclusion is that at the end of the episode, I had agreed that yeah, he very well probably faked this, and that his position had could very well be. There's a very good chance that it could be built on a lie, but the thing is, that doesn't take away from the pleasurable experience that I had with him. I still see him as a decent person, even
Hmm.
though the foundation of that is sort of is within question now, and it is one of those things where he is sort of he's given all this credibility because his story has not changed. But if the story from the beginning wasn't what he said it was, then that sort of like puts everything out there. But out of all the UFO gurus and talking heads out there, he's among the least controversial as far as his behavior. I don't believe he's ever been involved in a sex scandal. I don't believe he's ever started a cult. I
Hmm.
don't believe he's ever done. He's just sold his story, and the people who are interested have bought it. He hasn't been busted with questionable pornography like Stan Romanek. He hasn't started any cult or given people, to my knowledge, he hasn't giving out people miracle cures or claim to set up a med bed or some type of scam or, raised a bunch of money for, saying, I'll do this, I'll give you disclosure. And then when nothing happens, just take it to the bank. And, and then I go, no refunds. As far as I know, he set himself up to be a UFO talking head, and he succeeded at that.
Hmm.
And, but then again, that's a fact, which is a really hard thing to do if you're a fan of this stuff, to then take that stuff and then like, well, it's possibly built on a lie. There's a very high probability that it was then built on a lie, and it's very difficult to come up with it, especially when like myself, who's had such a pleasurable experience with it. So I can understand the argument regarding that, and it was just it's just a tough thing to deal with, but that's just the way that things are, and it's like just because, someone is probably hoaxing these events, that doesn't mean that spooky stuff doesn't happen or
Exactly.
that it could not have happened, that they had an encounter that, could have been genuine or something of that nature. I don't exactly know what I'm quite trying to say because we've all had encounters with spooky shit.
Yeah.
And I guess as far as that, what does that bring to the table? Whether or not aliens are if that particular venue is actually happening to the degree that we believe it is. I don't know, but I say we still ask questions and stuff of that nature, and we just acknowledge it and sort of move on. And if you don't want to believe him, go ahead. if you don't want to buy his books, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, am I emotionally conflicted? Of course I am, because I had a great lunch with this guy. So yeah, it's understandable, and what it all brings together and what it all means and stuff like that. But as a skeptic myself, I do have to look at that with a hard lens, and and agree with it, just on a matter of principle. But as much as I've tried to talk myself out of whether or not a person is morally good or bad, depending on my initial experiences with them, but overlooking all at the greater picture, I really can't make that determination, because
Yeah.
I feel that I'm too emotionally invested, or I'm emotionally compromised to really make that decision. But as far as the hard line goes, yeah, I do stand with the hard line.
Nice. Yeah, that's man, that's there's some good points there.
Hmm.
There is. So the whole Travis Walton case, abduction, to me that's like always been one of my favorites,
Hmm.
solely because Fire in the Sky, it's a it's a dramatized version. For anybody that doesn't know of the, it's a movie version.
Hmm.
It's pretty decent. It's a pretty decent alien movie.
Yeah, it's pretty much become iconic.
Yeah, cult classic.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, that movie was what that Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and then I think it's the Fourth Kind as well, were part of the reason I was so terrified as aliens as a child. And my dad, when he was still alive, that movie terrified him. Ever since he was a kid when it came out, terrified him. So we would always watch it. It's like, oh, don't get scared, Dad. The aliens ain't gonna get you. And it was just funny. So that's one that I've always looked at and believed without doing too much research into it outside of just what you hear from movies, documentaries, History Channel specials and stuff like that. But like you said, like even if it is all a hoax and stuff like that, scary stuff happens to all of us all the time.
Yeah.
And it's entertaining. It's a cult classic story. Everybody and the brother has at least heard of it, even if they don't know the details of it. It's still fun to talk about, and I guarantee has opened the door to a lot of people coming out and speaking of their experiences that may actually be true.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that we hear this line about when the movie came out, how they had dramatically changed it from what they originally initially planning, that it was going to be a more soft, fluffy, lovey-dovey type of movie, but then they said another movie was coming out that was too similar. So then they turned it into the traumatic gore fest that it is now, that is iconic. Yet no one can recall what that other movie was that Fire in the Sky was changed for. Like, Fire in the Sky is a movie everybody knows. The other movie that it was, that they tossed tossed their original blueprint out and then turned it into trauma time theater. Yeah, no one can recall what that other movie is. And I don't know. I guess that would be sort of a gem of ufology, is what was the other movie that Fire in the Sky was changed to avoid confusion with.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would like to know.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, if we can't think of it right now, it did not take
Yeah.
off.
It definitely wasn't one of the larger ones, so I really don't know. the The thing is, though, is that Travis Walton, he definitely was well versed in everything, because like I had stated earlier, when he had done his initial talking to people and stuff like this, he knew what was going on. um, a lot of the lore that he brings into, as far as the Greys, the spongy texture of their skin, the the what we would later consider the Nordics and their behavior and how they acted and all that stuff. That's all case by case taken straight from the overarching lore. So it shows that he was definitely very well researched in his encounters and in coming up with his story to make it the most convincing.
Hmm.
I know that a lot of people talk about it, like a lot of other things, like he was in financial trouble at the time, he had drug addictions at the time, and all that stuff. And I understand all that, but it's sort of like I think that stuff in a way kind of muddies the waters a bit, but I really don't know. But the important stuff is that he did have a sort of a lot going on regarding as far as his interest in the topic, and that's one of the things that I find funny is so many of these talking heads, a lot of them feel that pretending that they're not interested in the topic somehow adds gravitas to their encounters. Like
Hmm.
Bob Lazar, he'll always say, I was never interested in this stuff, and then blah blah blah, and it's like, well, no, you and your buddies tried to start a radio show talking about UFOs and stuff. There's so much lost Bob Lazar media out there of him, trying to cash in on this stuff, and it's sort of a thing that I guess there is sort of like a cash cow aspect of this, that which in a way sort of I guess it can incentivize dubious people, and a lot of us, because again we're desperate for answers, we're in a prime position to be duped about it. So
Yes.
there's like a collection of a perfect an almost perfect collection of something that where a happy accident can definitely happen, that can that can give everybody what they want, and in that nature, it is sort of primed for corruption. So that's why I and understanding that moving forward, which is why I understand now that I do like talking about people about their stories, whether or not they can prove them or not, because I'm just initially invested in the encounter and lore behind it. I like to hear people's encounters with aliens and stuff, and what it's all about. Just because as a it entertains me as a just as a listener.
Hmm. I feel that. I feel that 100%. Well, you know, I guarantee we could keep on going on this forever and going on all the. There's a lot. Like you brought up Bob Lazar. We could go down a Bob Lazar rabbit hole. But
Yeah.
you know,
Next
I
time.
think yeah. I was about to say definitely you'll be back on again. Uh, but we're about 2 hours in almost. I
Yes.
think this might be a good unwinding. And how about you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, sure, certainly. You can find me on Spotify and other audio podcast listeners under Conspire a Theory. And you can find me on social media on Instagram and Twitter at Conspire a Theory, all one word. Um, there will be a link that I'll provide to Ryley. You should still have that link, but I'll resend it to you again anyway. So I have a link tree that has a link to my YouTube channel and everything else. If you want to find me on YouTube, just it's best to just search Conspire a Theory podcast, and that you'll be able to find the results there of individual episodes, and you'll see them coming up. I it's it's the the logo is a little white fox curled up with a microphone. That's sort of my logo right now. So go ahead, and when you see that, you'll know you're at the right place.
All right. And I'll, like you said, I'll have all the links and everything for y'all. Go check it out. Good stuff over there. And we always got to support the friends of the show. That's just how it is. I'm demanding it. And, you know, with that being said, thank you for coming on again. It's always a blast talking to you. I know it won't be too long before you're back on again. Get in some, dive into some other topics. I had a blast with this. So
Yeah,
thank you again for coming on.
definitely. Thank you.
Well, guys, if you enjoyed this week's episode, like, share, follow, comment, all that good stuff you already know. Uh, I'm going to say it again. If you or anybody you know would like to be a guest on the show, reach out to me. If you can't remember it, rewind to the back front of the episode or check the description below. And because I forgot to mention it at the beginning of the show, it's going until the middle of May. If you or anybody you know is an artist and loves doing cover art for shows, I'm looking for a new logo for the next year of Midwest Mythos. I'm not quite sure what the prize is right now. I'm gonna have a community vote. People get to find out what it is. You all get to pick the logo, but right now it's probably bragging rights. And whenever I start making merch, you'll get a free T-shirt and stuff like that. But if you got the skills and you want to be part of Midwest Mythos history, send me a picture that you've done a new logo. And with that being said, y'all are awesome. I'll catch y'all next week. Stay blessed. Bye.